Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back here with another video, and today this is I already forgot, it's like episode 15th of the series where I teach you guys how to build a full stack application using React, Node, and MySQL. And in this video, I'm gonna bring something that was requested a lot by you guys, which is basically I'm gonna show you guys how to build a profile page in this application that we have, right? We already implemented several different features, but a profile page is actually something that a lot of websites have, and many people are confused on how can I actually make that? How can I make a page be different, like contain different information based on like who is looking at their profile page? So that's something that I want to address in this video. And to do that, we actually need to create a new component in our application. So I'm just going to get into the tutorial. We need to create a new page here into our routes, which is going to be called the profile page. So I'm just going to write profile.js. And this page over here, I'm just going to say RFCE to create a component. For now, let's just say profile page. And let's actually define this route on our app.js. I'm just going to import it here at the top by saying import profile from, and then it's just one dot, then pages, then profile, like this. And we're just going to create a route. We need to create it above this route over here because this is the page not found route, and we should leave it for last. So we're just going to create this one over here and put a /profile as our route. And then we're just going to render the profile component whenever someone tries to reach this route. So if we go now to our application and try to reach the /profile page, you'll see that now we have our beautiful profile page with only the h1 tag saying profile page. So to do this, we're going to be using something called parameters, and we've been using this in our application so far. For example, when you try to reach a post, you can pass the ID for the post as a parameter, and you can see a different post every time you put a different parameter. If I want to go to post 5, I just put 5 over here, and it will bring me to a post with ID 5. I'm going to do the same here, because what I want to do is whenever you see a post and you click on the name of the user over here, for example, Jake. Right now it's not doing anything obviously, but I want to make this a link so that when you click on this, it will bring to that person's profile page. So what we can do is we can define that this route will accept some parameters by coming over here and saying, passing some sort of parameter that it will accept, right? And similar to the post route over here, we're just going to accept the ID. But this ID won't be the post ID, it will be the user's ID, which comes from the user table over here, this ID over here that differentiates each user. So what we can do is we can come to the profile component over here, and we can start building out whatever we want to show in the profile page. Right now, what I want to show is I just want to show a list of all the different posts that this user specifically posted. And what else? I probably need to show their username, their name. I don't think we saved a lot of information. We just saved actually the username and password, so I don't think it's necessary. We'll just show the username and all the posts that that person specifically made. So to do that, we're going to start by creating here and giving this a class name, just because I know later on if I'm doing some CSS, I want to be able to access this. And I'm going to call this profile page container. And over here, I want to divide this into two different divs, which is going to be the first div is going to be like the information, so including the username, and if I later on add stuff like emails or birth date, whatever I want to add, I can just put those information over here. So I'm just going to say class name basic info, so this is the basic info section, and then we're also going to create another div which is just going to display all the posts that this user has created. So list of posts, like this. And right now, obviously, it won't show anything if we come to our application because we actually haven't defined this route yet. I'm actually going to go to profile and then go to /1 because I know the user number 1 is PedroTech. If you can see over here, it is PedroTech, and I'm logged in as PedroTech, so I'll be able to see all the changes. So what we want to do is we want to first of all just display the username right here in the basic info. And for that, I'm just going to create an H1 and say something like username, and then just put the username for the user. So now to do that, we need to get this from some sort of API request, and that API request should be based on the like the ID that we have here in our parameters. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be grabbing these parameters by using the useParams hook from React.DOM. So I'm just going to say import here at the top. Then I'm going to say from React.DOM. We've done this before. I'm just going to say useParams like this. And then I'm going to grab right over here any param that I can basically destructure from our parameters. So I'm just going to say use params like this. And right here, similar to what we've done in the post component over here, you can see that to grab the ID, we just say, just put the ID exactly how we wrote in our app.js. So let me come to my app.js. We call it the ID. So if again, we called it ID, so we just need to destructure the ID from here, like this. And now, this variable ID will be representing whichever number is passed here in the route. So what we can do is, we can make any API request and just pass this as some sort of ID that is going to represent which user we want to query. Now, let's actually open up our API folder because that's where we're going to be making our requests. And we should actually, should we actually create a profile route? I don't think that's necessary, to be honest, because every request we're going to be making for the profile route is related to users. It's trying to query information from the users, if that makes any sense, right? For example, over here, for the basic info, we're going to query like the username or whatever we want to like add further on from the user. So technically, we can do this right here and just put it inside of our users.js file. So let's actually create a new request. We have our post request to create a user. We have our login request that we've made a long time ago in the series. We have the auth request, but now we're going to create a get request because we're getting information from the user. And I'm just going to say / for example, basic info. I don't know if that's a good name for a route, but let's just call it like this. It's just querying basic information about the user. So do we need to pass validate token over here? Let's think about this. The only reason why you pass validate token is if you're trying to make a request that should be validated. For example, if you're trying to query personal information that only the person who's authenticated must be able to, can see it, right? But in this case, everyone can reach every profile page, right? So it doesn't really make any sense to have to validate this request, because it actually makes no sense, because you would, how can I validate anything if for example, if I'm trying to reach someone's profile page and I'm not that person? So we're not going to pass the validate token over here. We're just going to put a res, and that's fine. So let's think about this as well. Remember that we're passing the ID over here. So one thing that we can do is whenever we make this request, this get request, we can actually grab this ID variable from the params that exist inside of the endpoint as well. So we can do something similar to what we did in our profile page and just grab the ID as the params like this. And now to access this ID, we can say const ID equals to rec.params.id. We've done this so far in the series. It's very simple. We just grab this right here, and when we make the XUse request, we just pass the ID as the params. So now that we have this ID, we can use the user model, users model, to make some sort of request. So I'm just gonna say I'm actually gonna async this because technically we need to wait for some data to be returned. And what we can do is we can just say await const basic info. So we're going to grab the basic information from the user and then say equals to await, then users. And there's a function that, if you guys don't remember, we used it in the posts, I think. It's called find by PK. And PK is primary key, which means the ID. So we can just use this function from Sequelize right over here and just pass the ID, and it will grab information from the user based on this. Now we can pass some stuff that is going to some filters, right? Because, for example, I don't want to receive the password, right? I'm going to grab every single piece of information from the user, but I don't want to receive the password, because why would someone need to see the password in the profile page? So we have to account for that. But for now, let's just put find by PK and then pass the ID over here. Now, how will we say, like, how do we tell this to not select the password? So to do that, we can just come over here and pass some sort of attributes to this to this request, to this query, and we can just say, for example, we can pass an object and pass attributes like this. And attributes may be used for many things, including being able to exclude some sort of field from our request. So in this case, we want to pass over here an array of the fields that we want to exclude from this request, which in our case, we just want to exclude the password field. So I'm just going to pass over here password like this. Now, I know this logic might seem weird, but all we're saying is we want to query from the users table the user with the ID equal to ID, and then we want to pass some sort of extra information to this query. And this extra information is just telling the query to exclude the password field from the request so that we don't send back users' passwords for no reason, right? So now that we have this basic info done, we can just send back this as the response. So now that we have this request done, let's test it out. I have Insomnia over here, and I'm gonna just create a new request, which is gonna be basic info. That's how I'm gonna call it. Basic info. It's a GET request, and we're just gonna pass the same URL that we've been passing for other requests, but it's gonna be /users, and at the end we also need to pass some sort of ID. So I want to pass the ID 1 as a parameter, so we can query information about PedroTech. And if I send this, it says cannot be found. Did I call it /user? Let me just be sure. Login. Oh wait, I don't think there's. Oh wait, did I call this auth? No, I don't think I called this auth. Let's go to our index.js. Let's just debug this for a second. Yeah, I called this auth, which is annoying because I should have called this users. But that's not an issue. You guys probably understand what this means. Instead of being /users, it will just be /auth. So on the basic info, I'll say /auth/1, and it's still not appearing because I need to pass this /basic info like this and /1. So when we send this, now we should return back all the information that we wanted to query, which in this case is just all the information that we have from the user but the password. If we want to add in the future other fields like email, birth date, I don't know, age, whatever we want, we can put them over here, and all of them will be returned as basic information. So what we can do now is we can actually query this information through our profile page in React by importing Axios here at the top. So import Axios from Axios, and we're just going to create a use effect right over here, which, as you can see, was already imported automatically. And this use effect will be ran exactly when you open the page. It will be ran one time, and it will just be whenever you access the page for the first time, and it will make all the queries necessary to build the page up. So that's important for us to understand. And the first request that we want to be doing is the basic info request. So we're going to say axios.get, and we want to use backticks for this because we're going to be including this ID variable as the params. So what we do is we say http:/localhost 3001. Then we put the route that we've created there, right? That we just wrote. So it's /auth/basic-info/ and then over here we need to pass the ID, which is unique depending on which user you're trying to access. So we'll just pass the variable over here by using the JavaScript syntax and passing ID. And this should be okay. We just say .then and grab the response, and then over here we should be seeing the response being dealt with through this variable. So one thing we can create is we can actually create a variable or a state called username and set username. And this is going to be a very simple state, just holding the information about the user that is currently that we're trying to access, right? So this is going to be a string, and to set this to actually work, we can grab this username through the response, because the response, if you recall, is just this object. So what we can say is we can basically set username to be equal to response.data, and our response.data is this object, and then we just have to say .username to grab the user's username. So response.data.username, and now the username state is being correctly represented. So now all we have to do is we just have to say username over here. And I guess this should be working, and as you can see, it is. If we go to different routes, let me try this profile. Let's go to user number 2. It should show Michael Scott. I don't even remember creating this user. User number 3 is John. You can see it changes based on whoever you're trying to reach, right? But this isn't all that we have to do in this video. We also have to make a request to only query the posts that were created by those specific people. So, for example, PedroTech created actually just 2 posts, right? So what I want to see is I want to be able to come here to the slash profile slash 1 page, and right over here just show the list of all the requests that PedroTech created, or all the posts that PedroTech created. Now to do that, it's not even going to be that hard. What we want is we actually want to create some sort of request that isn't actually in the users route, because we're not dealing with users, we're dealing with posts. So we're gonna open up here the posts file, the post route file, and down here at the bottom we want to basically just grab some sort of request. Actually, I'll just do it right here. You can see that in this route we're just querying a post based on its ID. And right now we want to do the opposite. We want to query all the posts that exist based on a user's ID. So I'm just gonna copy this code over here that we wrote. I'm going to paste it again right here. And what I want to do is I want to continue by using by ID, but now actually I'm going to call this by user ID. And this means that we want to query, this route will serve to query all the different posts that have been made by a certain user who is represented by the user ID that we pass over here. You can call this ID as well. Actually, I'll call this ID. Sorry about that. Just make more sense. We've been using this format, but we're just passing the ID over here, and that should be fine. Now, we're saying const ID equal to rec.params.id. That's fine. But here's the different part. We aren't trying to query by primary key because this isn't what we want. We actually want to find all posts. So we're going to be using the find all method from Sequelize. And I'm going to call this list of posts because it's exactly what we want. We want a list of all the posts. But here, we want to pass some sort of attribute. The attribute we want to pass is we want to say that we only want to query the post IDs if the user actually has the same, like the ID that we pass over here is equal to whichever ID exists for the user who created that post. Now there might be some issues, and there is actually an issue. If we go to our post table over here, there's no ID, there's no user ID over here in this table. We only have the username of the user who created, which we can indeed use to make this request, but it's not recommended because we want to use the ID of the user to identify them, right? That's literally the point of an ID. So before we can finish this over here, and I want you guys to hold this for a second, I'll actually just comment this out. We want to be able to add to this table some sort of field which is going to represent the user ID, and it's going to be created automatically whenever you create a post. And that's kind of hard, but at the same time, we need to do this in order to make our application work. So the first step to do that is go to our models, and similar to what we've done before, we need to say that our user, like our user table over here, I think it's this one, yeah, has many posts. Right now we're saying that users has many likes, which makes sense. A user can like many different posts, but we're not saying that a user can have many different posts. And when we do this, this will create the user ID field in the post table. So let's just do this right here. I'll just copy this code and just paste it over here, and then just change this to the posts model that we've created. It's actually posts, so I'll just call it like this. And then we just, that's actually fine, the code is fine. Now if we save this, we can see that in our table we actually have the user ID field right over here. And this has been done automatically because we added this field over here. It means that it will create a primary key in your table. However, if the changes don't appear, you might want to maybe try deleting the post table and just saving this again, because then Sequelize will run the command and create the table again for you. You might lose some fields, like whatever we created previously, whichever posts we created previously, but that's totally fine. Also, you can just alter this directly. You can come over here to post and just click on alter table and create the user ID if you want to. But that's fine. This is just in case any errors occur. But now we have the user ID field in our table, which is amazing. So what we need to do is we actually need to come to where we create a post, which is this request over here. Let me try to find it. Is this one over here. This is where we actually create a post and add it to our table. And now we actually need to also add the user ID over here, because it is a new field and we're currently not adding anything whenever we create a post. So how exactly will we do this? Well, it's similar to when we actually added our username. We have access to the user's who is like logged in username, because we're using the validate token middleware. So all we do is we just create a new field in our post object. Let's call it user ID. It has to be exactly like how it's created in the table, and then we're just going to set this equal to rect.user.id, and this we can actually access because, as I've shown many different times in this course, we can access both the ID and the username as part of the token. That's actually the data that we're storing in our JWT, so that's how we're actually accessing this. And now this should be working perfectly. Let me actually create a new post. Let me come over here to our page and let me create a new post. Let me just call this a new post, and the post is just, this is really cool, like and sub. So I'm just going to click create post, and it should be here down the bottom, as you can see. Now let's refresh our table, and as you can see, it registered the user ID 1 as the ID for myself, because I'm logged in as PedroTech, and PedroTech's ID is the number 1. So that's working perfectly. So what we might want to do now is we might want to use this as part of our request, which is exactly what we wanted before. We want to be able to say that we want to grab all the posts in the post table where the user ID is equal to the ID that we're passing in the params. So we can say where user ID is equal to the ID that we got from the params, this one over here. So this should be returning the correct information, and we just give that back as the response to our request. Now let's hope this is working. To actually make this request work, let's just try coming here to Insomnia and let's try to get this. Let's call this posts by user ID. And it's going to be a GET request as well. Let's just copy the same URL. It's actually a different URL. It's over here on the... Let me just grab this one over here. And let's just paste it over here. It's actually... we actually called it by user ID, so I'll just paste this over here. And it's the one. So we're actually we just want to grab all the posts related to PedroTech because we're passing the ID 1. So when we click send, it returns just one post, which is the one we've created so far. And obviously PedroTech created more posts, but as you can see, since we didn't have this functionality of adding the user ID before, it just defaulted all user IDs for each post to 0. We can fix that whenever we want to. I'm just gonna change it for those who were made with like from PedroTech from this account, because I know the user ID. I'll just make them 1, and you can make them 1, like you can update rows directly on MySQL Workbench if you're using the software, and then you just need to click apply to make the changes. So this is actually just the SQL that is running right now. I'm gonna click apply, and you'll see that now if I refresh this, it's actually correct. So this is just something that I have to do because we updated the table. So now if I make this request again, you'll see that it's actually querying all the posts made by me. So now that we know that the request is working, let's just implement it in React. Let's make it so that we can actually query this in our frontend. So let's come here to our profile page, and we're actually going to make another request over here, which is also a GET request. And I'm just going to copy this over here and just paste it here. And what we want is we want to be able to go to the /posts /by user ID. So by user ID. This is how we actually called it. And then /ID as well. We're actually going to pass the ID similar to what we've been doing so far. And then over here, we're just going to say dot then. We're going to grab the response like this, and we're going to actually use this response because the response will be the array containing all the posts that we need. So I'm just going to create another state over here. It's going to be called list of posts, and let's use the function set list of posts. And this is going to be a state representing an array containing all the posts from this user. So now down here at the bottom, all we do is exactly the same as this. We're just going to set the list of posts equal to response dot data, and this should be correct. This should be actually returning all the actual lists, all the actual posts that we've seen so far. Now, we've actually done this before. We've actually created a state called list of posts and displayed them perfectly, right? This is exactly what we did in the homepage. This is what we're seeing right here. So what we can do is we can actually just copy this code for the list of posts and just replace it down here in our profile page. I'm just going to do that, and you can see that we actually do that over here. We just have a state called list of posts and we just map through them. So I'm just going to copy this code like this, and let's just paste them down here inside of this div. Now there are some changes we need to make, and you can clearly see them because they are like it's not working. It's just giving us some errors, and the main reason for that is because we added a bunch of functionalities, including liking someone's post, having this thumb over here, which we didn't have. We don't currently have it imported, and also some information based on if you like the post or not. Now, what I'm thinking is I don't want to deal with this, especially because it doesn't really make sense. You can like people's posts by just going to the home page. So I don't think it's necessary to show you guys how to implement that in the profile page, because I've had a full video on this if you want to check it out. It's part of the series. It's like 3 videos ago. I showed you guys how to implement the liking system. So what I want to do is I'm actually just going to display the amount of likes, maybe. Actually, I won't even... Yeah, I'll actually display the amount of likes, but also I'm going to come over here and delete this. We are not going to be able to like a post from the profile page. Now, all of this is fine. We can access the username. We can access this. I'm not going to allow them to like, so I'm going to remove this. No, this is actually not part of the liking system, so it's fine. And I guess this is it. If I actually refresh this, all we have right now is an issue with history, which is part of this code, and we can actually fix it by coming over here and importing the use history hook from React.DOM. And similar to what we've done so far, I'm just going to call this history and set it equal to use history. We've dealt with this before. It's just something that is just a hook that can be used to navigate throughout your routes. So now that we save this, you can see that if I go to /profile/1, it's actually not working. It's saying length not defined, which is kind of weird. I'll try to fix this in a second and I'll be back. Oh, okay guys, I know exactly what the issue is. If you recall, the only reason why we can access length in this request is because we can access likes from this request. And likes is completely different from posts. It's not even, like, there's no likes field in the post table. But the only reason why we can access this in the home page is because we added some sort of join when we made this request. And I guess it's this request over here, the post request, right? This one over here. So it's fine. We can actually do this as well in this request that we've just created. Let's just go to the post route down here at the bottom, and let's see what we did so far. Yeah, this is what we did. We basically just said that we wanted to include likes in this request, and we can do this as well by coming over here where, let me see, it's on this one by user ID. And I just want to say that I want to include the likes model, so that whenever you make this request, now it's also going to include all the likes. It's going to join the two tables and base them correctly. So you can see that if I make this request now over here, it should include a likes field down here at the bottom, and it does, based on how many likes this post has. And this is what we've done before, and it works perfectly. So if we refresh the page now, it should be working, and it is. It shows all the posts that were created by PedroTech, and this is really nice. Let's actually log out from this and create log in as Michael Scott because I want to show you guys that it works for other pages as well. So I'm going to log in. I'm Michael Scott now, and I'm actually going to create a post with Michael Scott. Let's say that's what she said. If you guys don't know, I make a lot of The Office references, but I'm going to create this post. It's down here at the bottom, and if you log into Michael Scott's profile page, which let me check to see what is his ID. It's ID 4. We can just see that this post will be there. So let's go to profile and go to 4, and you can see that this post is right here. Now the UI is not perfect, and I've mentioned several times in this series that I don't care that much about the UI, but I'm probably going to make some changes with this later on after I finish the video, and if you want to check out the code, it's all in the description. The only thing that we have left is being able to navigate to that profile page by clicking on the username over here, and that's completely fine. That's actually pretty easy. All you have to do is, we know that now in each post we have this user ID, which is perfect because we can use that as to navigate towards the profile page with the correct param. So let's open up our home page over here, and where we display the username, which is down here at the bottom, is this one over here. We can just come here and say link, which is a component from React, and just enclose it like this. And now that we have this, we can pass the username and make it a link. But not only that, but we can say that we want to go to, and over here we just want to pass some JavaScript because we want to pass a string that contains a variable. So it's kind of weird, but if we want to do this, we have to write in this syntax. So I'm just going to say slash profile like this, slash, and then I'm going to pass the JavaScript variable, and I'm going to pass value dot user ID like this. And now if I come to our thing over here, obviously when I turned it into a link, it now looks horrible. It looks it's dark blue, but if I click on it, it should have brought us to the correct place, but it doesn't. It says cannot read property username of null. What? Why is it going to 0? Oh, okay, wait, it's actually going to user 0, which is kind of weird. Let me try that again. Oh, it's because I tried to go to Jake's page, which as we've done so far, like, he didn't post anything. Let me try to go to PedroTech's page, which is this one over here. When I click on it, it actually brings me to the profile page for PedroTech, and it looks amazing. So that's basically it for this video. I showed you guys how to build a profile page that it is specific for each user. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like down below and comment what you want to see next. Subscribe because I'm posting 3 times a week, and I would massively appreciate it because it will help me push my videos to more people, and I would be very happy if you guys did that. So yeah, that's basically it, and I see you guys next time.